Good morning everyone, I'm Victoria and Spencer-Kibble from Vast Therapy, and I help professionals to cope with grief and their sadness so they feel happy again and after a loss of a loved one or loss of something. So there's different types of losses, not just grief as in loss of a loved one. There's also secondary losses, and what I mean by secondary losses, they can be ambiguous losses or disenfranchised losses. You see, what happens is with secondary losses, they're very much personal to the person. So sometimes it can be, when we talk about different types of losses, I think it's important to note certain experiences might actually constitute several different types of loss all at once. And this is quite often true for secondary losses, which amongst other things can also be considered as this ambiguous loss or disenfranchised loss. Grief that people experience when they incur a loss, it is not and cannot be openly acknowledged, or they can't publicly mourn it, i.e. they have a loss of faith or they have a loss of self-worth. And this tends to happen after grief. That's why we call it a secondary loss. But there's also non-death losses as well, where after grief, again, after a loss of a loved one, they have financial instability. So they're worried about financial losses. They worry about their loss of sense of value or self-esteem in their self. They also worry about loss of support system, so friend and family, because they're going through their own grief and they're not sure that they can be around for them in the capacity that they were before they went through the initial grief loss. And suddenly, sometimes that can incur actual physical losses as well. So I just wanted to talk about a client that I've dealt with on several occasions now around grief. And this person has definitely suffered a young loss when she was very young, lost her mum when she was in her teenage years. That was bad enough as it was, having to grow up without a mum. And then she lost a baby herself. So she's the most inspirational lady I know, and she really doesn't know how much she means to her family and the people around her, including me. That's because she's lost her self-worth, her self-esteem, her confidence in herself because of this accumulation of grief that she's gone throughout her life. So that is what I mean by secondary losses, ambiguous losses and disenfranchised losses. So what I've worked with this lady 3 times now on different things, and every time there's new issues that come up, and that's what life does to you. New issues comes up and the mind likes what's familiar. She sometimes drops back into bad habits because she's lost her self-worth. She doesn't feel good enough, and she absolutely is. She's also gone through things with her children, her other children, not the baby that she lost, but her other children, where her other children have developed their secondary losses, which have been, again, confidence in themselves and also physical, where one person lost his sense of smell and taste. That's because he was blocking out grief. He didn't want to feel the grief, so he automatically shut down and decided that I don't want to let this in. This isn't happening to me. Absolute denial. So in his mind, he thought it was better to just block the sense of smell and block the sense of taste out. Now, that's an incredible thing that the mind can do, because the mind only does what we tell it to do. And it doesn't care whether it's good or bad, false or true. It just does what you think it needs to do. So the mind and body work in conjunction with each other. So when I worked with this young man to get his sense of smell back, we went back to scenes of, within the Vast Therapy that I do, we went back to scenes of blank rooms and all which could come across as quite frightening, really, for unexperienced therapists, because when people can't see or feel things, you tend to feel that you're not going in the right direction. But it actually showed that everything was blank to him. He didn't want to feel at all. And I understand that. So all we have to do is follow the feeling till we can revert that feeling and change the meaning of that feeling. So I wanted this young man to be able to smell his wife on his wedding day, to taste foods around the world when he goes out for dinners. And there's all different things like that are secondary losses that we don't realise come after initial grief. So I just wanted to pop on today to just be aware when you're around people that they've kind of changed a little bit. They've become withdrawn because grief can be very lonely and very isolating. Just do that checkup. We don't care what you say to us. Just say to us anything. How are you doing today? That's an easy one. You can say that to anyone. Are you okay? We know the answer's going to be in the initial stages, no, I'm not okay. But we want to be careful and watch out for those secondary losses if they come. Not everyone suffers them, but some people do. And just watch out for them, because we can all help each other to overcome and get through grief and move forward. It needs to be felt, so we need to heal. We need to feel to heal. And we've got to feel those feelings and those emotions, otherwise they will manifest. And if you bury them through drinking or medication or anything in excess, it can be anything from exercise to screen time, we push those feelings down so we don't have to feel them. They will grow and grow and grow and come back bigger and better and stronger and bite us back. So that's why we really need to deal with grief and go through the process of it. So secondary losses, just something to watch out for, even years after, because that can be a sign of complicated grief. And complicated grief definitely needs to be addressed. So just appreciate those people who've really lived, because they're the people who have got those grief wounds, and from those grief wounds there shines a light, because if you're feeling grief, you truly loved, and if you truly loved, you can expand that love and you can love again. So I'm happy to say the woman I spoke about earlier, she's actually having a baby now. So out of the grief and loss of her mom and then her little one, she now is having another baby. So that love is expanding, and that love is in incredible expansion because it's giving back to her children, back to her husband, back to her loved ones around her. So out of that initial grief, that love has expanded because she has that blueprint. She has that blueprint in her, that impression in her to feel and accept love. We just need to release it back out again. So there's a precious new baby coming into this world that is going to be so treasured and so loved and so wanted and looked down on with special guardian angels and be the most perfect little being. So I just wanted you to know that still out of grief, there's always shining love, because we only feel grief when we felt real, true love. So that's just my thought for this morning, or still this morning, 11:30 in the UK. Not so hot today, people, but still a beautiful day. So coming up to the weekend, have a fabulous Friday, everyone. And remember, inspire to achieve and achieve to inspire.